Okay. I apologize to everyone. I just started recording. We haven't done much besides talk about the cubes. I'll start from here. The example in the top left corner is an example of evenly distributed polygons, which results in a squishy, samey sort of look on our divots. Same thing with the bottom example. If we add edge loops around our divots, as in the top right example, then our divots will come out looking a lot sharper. Good, good, good. Next thing. This is an excellent example of good work shown poorly. Can anyone explain why?
It's all fuzzy.
It's all fuzzy is a good answer. It does look extremely fuzzy, extremely grainy. Anything else? It's off-center. This is the image that was turned in. All of the dice are on the right side of the image. There's this strange white space around the bottom and the left side of the image. Secondly, if I go to the wireframe that was turned in with this, this, on the far bottom left corner, looks great. I can actually see what's going on down here. But if I look at the more detailed cubes on the right, I can't actually see what those edge loops are. So I don't know what's going on in there. I mean, I do because I helped you work on it. But because I can't, get in there and look at it, I would appreciate a zoomed in close-up view of one of the dice so that I could actually see what's going on in there. Good work done poorly. I think that's it. That's your dice. For the people so that I can talk about the recording again, this is an example of things that have been smoothed. Don't do that. Don't hit the smooth button. Just hit the 3P so that we can see the wireframe preview. That was the only other big takeaway. And here are everyone's dice. You should be able to see your dice up there, and you should be able to know and compare it to the other people in the class. Great. That's the dice. Any questions about the dice? How did everyone feel about working on the dice project?
I forgot how to do the edge loops.
Good answer. I can tell you now that based on all of the text that you put in your discussion boards, at least 5 people answered with Maya sucks. It broke down halfway through. It crashed on me. There were errors. This is the Maya experience. You will get used to it. Just this morning, I discovered a new error with Maya that makes it so that all of the windows it opens are invisible.
What?
Yeah, no, it's great. We love working with Maya. All right, Maya. So, where we left off on Monday, we were working on the crates. Let's see if I am crazy. I am. Oh dear. So, because I'm crazy, I successfully forgot that I should have saved the work we did on Monday. Which means that I had to rebuild it overnight. So hopefully, when it pops up the crate, in the meantime, make sure nothing is doing as it should be. Okay. Unfortunately, it looks like it did erase some of my stuff. Okay, good, great. Oh, never mind, I found it. Good stuff. So here's where we left off, roughly on Monday. Why have you decided to open the graph editor? I don't need this. I don't need this. Definitely don't need it. And swap from animation to modeling. Why is the Maya interface all bumped? Okay. Well, here's our crate. This is sort of where we left off on Monday, right? I hope. If I remember watching my own YouTube video. On Monday, we did the wheel crate. Well, we did the rope crate first, and then we started doing the wheels, and then we made the crate. There is one thing that is on this that didn't exist on Monday, which is the little box around the crate, the little heart. Yes?
Oh, I tried to use the space method to cycle through cameras, but it's only switching between 2.
Okay. Good question. So, when you hit space, sometimes you will end up with the 4 view. But if you look on the left side of your Maya interface, you also have this 2 option, this 4 option, and this 1 option. Those also let you swap through cameras. So if you're hitting space and you're only seeing 2 of them, try hitting this 4.
Alright, thank you.
No problem. Alright, so back to the crate. Let me reopen our reference images from D2L. Content, communication, module discussion for 3. Modeling the crate. Ah, yes, that's one thing that I forgot. I did not put the image plane in for our benefit, so let me do that. File, import image plane, no wait, my side view, image plane, import image. Where did I put the image? In my downloads folder. Success. Great. Make crate big. Page off to the side. Reference image. Good. So this is where we left off. Slightly further back than we were on Monday, but if I remember correctly, we left off on making the crenellations on the crate. If not, we're going to go over that again. So, step 1 on getting the crenellations on the crate is to create the pattern. So, this is an example of what that pattern will look like by the time we're done, but I'm going to start over on that now. So, make a cube. Drag the cube to the top of our reference cube. Right? Make it the appropriate dimensions, which I believe, based on the reference image and what I put in the discussion board, was 23 by 23 by 19. Let me open up that reference. Here's that reference that I put up on D2L. It was the second link. We have the C7 computer crate. That is the one we're working with. So 23 by 5, 23 by 5, 19 tall. We don't really care about the 19 tall. We just care about the 23.5 and the 23.5. Was there a question somewhere? Are you okay?
Yeah, we're good.
All right. And we will adjust for centimeters by making sure that all of this is 2.54, 2.54 by 2.54 on the scale. There's our lid. Now we don't care about the bottom half of the lid right now. So we're going to add a subdivision down the side so we can cut it in half later. And now we're going to talk about the funny crenellation pattern. So, if we look at our reference, drag our reference over here, we can count the number of teeth on the crenellations. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There's 8 teeth. Every teeth has 2 slants and a flat portion. Right? 1 flat portion, 2 slants. So, 8 times 3 is 24. If we wanted to do this in a methodical fashion, we would account for the 24 edges that our teeth are going to have by creating 24 subdivisions on our cube, on our lid. Now, if you type in 24, oh, what? Yeah, here we go. Subdivisions width 24. We will end up with something that looks like this. And we can go ahead and count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 11, 12, 24. Don't worry about it, mine is good. If, instead of doing this, I wanted to insert edge loops, because we're good at that. Mesh tools, insert edge loop. Whoop. Where did my edge loop tools go? Mesh tools, insert edge loop, put the half oval square. If I were to do it this way around, and I wanted 24 subdivisions, 24 subdivisions have 23 edge loops between them, so I would subtract 1 if I were doing this, and I would end up with the same amount of edge loops. Why? Because the insert edge loops tool and the create subdivisions tool are different. Now, we also want to account for the 2 ends, because if we zoom in real close, or if we Google an image of what the lid looks like, go figure, We will find out that at the end of the teeth, there's a single straight bit that connects it to the edge of the box. So for that reason, instead of having 24 sides, we're going to have 26. Right? So 24 subdivisions, plus 2 for the end caps, minus 1 because we're inserting edge loops. 25 total. Ding. Ding. Boom. This is the start of our lid. Now, going the other way, I'm going to divide this in thirds. Yes, question, answer.
When you click 3 and you smooth a thing, how do you unsmooth the thing?
Hit 1.
1?
Do you have it selected?
Yes. I thought it would be funny. It's not funny anymore. Oh, I fixed it. I know everything.
Okay. Great. Sometimes problems solve themselves. Those are my favorite problems.
Yeah.
So I've divided our lid in thirds. I'm also going to go ahead and divide it in half, just so that we know where the middle of the crate lid is. From there, I'm going to swap to my top view, and I'm going to start drawing out where the teeth are going to be. With my multi-cut tool, I'm going to add in 2 diagonals. And as I do this, I can start seeing where the teeth shape comes from. You are looking at me expectantly. Is there a question in the back? Guess not. So I will do this all the way through, except for the 2 ends. Yes?
Edge loop tool is like being weird.
Okay. Could you be a bit more specific than it's being weird? Can't fix things being weird.
So whenever, oh, of course it works now.
Yep.
Also, what's the way to like?
You are using the insert edge loop tool instead of the multi-cut tool. Now you can hold control. There you go. And you can hold shift to snap it to 50% or etc.
So if you're wanting to smooth it, instead of doing like manually putting in edge loops, are you able to do like subdivisions? Like are you able to like enter the number of those subdivisions and do it that way?
That is an excellent question.
Because
So-
theoretically it could work. I don't know about prosecution.
No. So this is a good question, and I'll answer it now just because it was asked. The question was, if we've already played around with our model, can we just add subdivisions to get it to work the way we want it to? The short answer is no, not really. I'm trying to figure out if any of these are original. You're original. Great. So, Control 1. This is one of our wheels. Let's use this as an example. Right now, when I smooth it, it appears fine. And hit F so that we can get it full on. If I hit F on this wheel, it looks fine. But let's assume that it did. Let's assume that this isn't smooth enough. If, as you suggested, I attempt to add subdivisions to the cylinder, you will see something weird happen. So let's go with 7 instead of 3. Now you know what happens if you try to add in subdivisions.
Why did that happen?
So the reason why this happens is because in Maya's internal code, every face has a number. And as you extrude new faces into the object, those numbers change. So if, for instance, this is phase 1, when we start the object, now that there are 30 more faces than there used to be, this might be face 27. But all of our operations of adding in faces and cutting faces and smoothing faces and adding in edge loops, all of that was done to face 1 through, say, 16. If we started with a 16-sided cylinder. So when we go in and tell it, okay, now I want to change the subdivisions, what it attempts to do is, okay, let's look back at step 1, add in those new faces, and then repeat all of the operations that we just tried to do. But now, since all of the faces are out of order, it doesn't work. So don't ever play with these after you've extruded or moved things around, or even just moved edges to different places, because it'll break things. Back to the lid. Sorry, slide aside. So now we're here, and we can clearly see what is starting to look like the teeth of the lid. We've got these trapezoids. So what we're going to do to make them stand out more is we're going to get rid of all of the edge loops that don't matter by selecting them and deleting them. Pop. Now we have something that looks like teeth shape. We're going to do that for all of these other extra edge loops. Tedious process is fun. Good stuff. This one goes bye-bye. This one goes bye-bye. These. Oh, why can I no longer select these? Hello? Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Are we able to make a shortcut to the multi-cut?
Are you able to make a shortcut to the multi-cut?
Yeah, like a hotkey.
Yes, it's called this button up here.
Okay.
So if we go into any of these menus, all of them have a happy little picture next to them. The ones that have the happy little picture that match the buttons up here, that's the shortcut.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we don't get a hotkey.
There's no hotkey to multi-cut that I know of. Yeah, I'm afraid not. You can theoretically make your own hotkeys if you go into the preferences and there's a hotkey editor. I have never played with that because in my experience, and I'm sure in many of your experiences, there are already too many hotkeys to memorize. So I will continue deleting the faces that I don't want out of my tooth shape. Okay, and we will end up here. Now, because I'm just doing this on the top view, the astutely minded will realize that the edges of my lid still have far too many edge loops around the side of them. If you hold Shift, click one, and then double click one next to it, you will select the entire edge loop, all of the adjacent edge loops, and you can delete them all in one go. Whoop, there we go. But you will be selecting the corners if you do that. So if you do that, do make sure to deselect your corners. Why am I attempting to work by looking at the projector screen? That is silly. Don't do that. There we go. Huzzah. We can add the ones that we want back in later. So I will also, having done this, delete the bottom half of my lid because it doesn't matter. Because we only care about the top half. Don't worry about the hole on the bottom, we'll get there eventually. So now we're here. We can double check that all of these are polygons. We can see that they are not. If I go to my vertex view, I can see if there's any vertexes that I've left behind. I have. We can select the extra ones, delete them, make sure that everything are quads by selecting faces, and attempting to select loops. And we are successful. Hooray. We've successfully recreated the teeth shape from under there. And if you want your teeth to be slightly shorter, you can select these two edges and squish them in to make smaller teeth, or stretch them out to make longer teeth. I will choose to make them about that big. Good. Now, yes, question?
So how do I do the thing where like you delete the line on the edge?
Right, so if you have, if you have an edge, I have selected one edge. It's this edge that I've selected. If I hold Shift and double click an edge that is opposite, okay, how do I want to explain this? This is a quad, It has 4 edges. If I select an edge and double click the opposite edge on that quad, I will select an entire row that runs parallel to each other. Does that make sense?
It's like trying to select something else.
Let's find out what's happening. Hello.
Cause like I click on this
Right.
and I double click this.
Hold shift. Click one edge. Now I'm gonna hold shift, now double click that one. What is going on? So, sometimes, when you have n-gons, if you attempt to do this, you will select the wrong edges. So, apparently that's a thing. Be very careful about which edges you are double clicking and make sure not to delete anything you should. So, this is our lid. Huzzah. Except that it doesn't quite fit on the crate underneath it. So what we're going to do is scale it down until it does. There we go. That's about right. Then we're going to stretch it out so that it fits the other way around. Good. Here is the lid on this crate. Success. Now we're going to look at the hinges on the lid. As we can see, if we count them, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 teeth. But, if you will remember, when we made our lid, which had 8 teeth, we've got a problem, because 8 and 9 are not multiples of each other. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a new cube. We're going to drag this cube out. We're going to make it the correct size, 23.5. We only care about the length for this one. Adjust for centimeters, 2.54. Drag it up. And this is going to be the weird bar that is on the side of the box, this bar, right here. I'm gonna stretch it up a bit so that it looks like it's about the right size, make it a bit thicker. Drag this into a reference box. Drag it roughly to where we need it. Underneath is the lid. Good, 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 good. And as we discussed previously, we need 9 subdivisions, so we'll go with 9. And now we have something to work with. So I will shift select my lid, and I will go to my vertices. Well, I've got quite a few vertices along the bottom that I don't need. I'm going to quickly select all of those except for corners and delete them because we don't want the extra vertices. Delete. Oh. Please. Thank you. Good. And as I was saying, we want to move the vertices on our teeth to line up with the vertices on our box. To make this easier, we're going to take one last look at our reference box. Realize that 5 of them, the 2 on the outside and the 3 on the side box, extrude upwards. So we're going to do that on this box. We're going to pick every other tooth. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Extrude them up. So it matches our box, our reference. And now we've got to move the vertexes on the lid to line up with the other part of the lid. So I'm going to quickly go into ForeView, and I'm going to start moving vertexes. So this one, I'm going to the right. This one, here. This one to the right. There we go. Come on, line up. Thank you. This one, if you are moving your vertexes, you're holding V, and it starts snapping to the things underneath, remember that we can always go back to our object view and hit Control 1 so that we hide everything that we don't want to move around. This one I'm actually okay with being there because it doesn't quite line up. So we're going to move this one instead. Gonna check in on the other side real quick. Make sure that I have enough vertices to actually do this. 1, 2. Selected one too many vertexes there. 3 and 4. Great. And now my shape looks like this. Oh, I missed one. That one. You go here. Great. Now if I control on my lid so that I know what that looks like, it looks a bit like this. And this is only half of the box, remember, we still have to do the other half of the box. Let's control one again. I want to select those faces that I just made. Control one. Go back to my box. Vertex. Multi-cut tool. I'm going to drop perpendicular lines from each of these vertexes now that they're in the positions that I want them. I can hold Control and Shift, and that'll make my multi-cut tool green. That means that it's only drawing straight lines at right angles. If you have taken a high school geometry course, you can recognize that green L shape as the 90-degree angle symbol. That'll let you know that you are holding both Control and Shift. So we're just going to do this for each of these vertices. Hit Enter on each of them. And when you are hovering over the bottom edge, that edge will glow red, which is how you know that you are putting the vertice on that edge instead of just in the middle of the face. Some more at the end here. 1 and 2. Good. Now, once again, Control 1. Pull everything back. We're going to select the faces that are going to be the other half of our hinges. Extrude those out. Great. Those are the teeth that are going to lock in with the other teeth. Right, you can drag this back and see how they fit in nicely. Good. Now that we've done that, we'll realize that currently they are intersecting in a weird way. We can fix that by moving some faces slightly back. We don't want to move the part of the plastic that is melded into the side of the box. Don't want to alt tab. I can just look over here, be like, yep, that is part of the box. So we don't want to move our frame. Instead, we're just going to move the faces on our lid. Face, Control. Oop. Select them all. Control 1. We want to move the faces on the end, so I'm going to select all of these faces, and then hold Control to deselect the ones that I don't want to move. Control 1 again, and just move these back until they fit. That looks good. And then each of these extrusions we will talk about later. Let's do the other side. This frame is identical, so we're going to go Object Mode. Oop. Modify Center Pivot, make sure that that is fine. Good. Hold Shift, drag a clone to the other side. If you don't want to eyeball it, instead of dragging a clone, remember that you can always mirror it from the Mesh menu. So I'm going to Mesh. This one is in the Z axis, Z backwards. You can always orient your mirrors based on your little XYZ point in the bottom right corner. So since it is in the Z direction that we wanted to mirror it, we mirrored it in the Z direction. Should be nice. Good. Now, we'll do the same thing that we did on the other side over here. We're going to go to vertexes on both of these objects, select them both. Vertex, vertex. Actually, let's go to Object Mode and Control 1 first, just so that we hide everything else. Now we'll go to Vertex, Vertex. With our Move tool, start moving edges so that they line up to where we need the teeth. Oh, did I? Nope, that's not good. good. Go back to object mode, time, see that it lines up, good. The face. Select all of them, Control 1. Drop down the vertical edge loops, the vertical these. Remember it's Control Shift to drop perpendicular lines. Have I lost anyone yet, by the way? Should have asked that a bit ago. Any questions about what I've been doing so far? Great. Yes.
I'm having difficulty like closing the multi-cut tool, like when I'm using it and you're done doing a thing. How do you close off the thing?
So when you're here,
Yes.
hit enter.
Oh. And then you can make a new line.
Correct.
Okay.
So if you're using the multi-cut tool and you add in a couple of edges and you want to submit those edits, you can hit enter. If you are using the multi-cut tool and you really don't like these edges, you can hit escape and then you lose them all. Those are the two main ways to exit out of the multi-cut tool. So now that we've added in our edge loops, Control E, we're going to drag these teeth out. Control 1 so that we can make sure that they line up right. They do. Good stuff. We're now going to Control 1 again. Select everything. Control 1. Select the faces that we want to move back by selecting more than those faces, and then using Control to deselect faces. Go back to the Control 1 view and move them so that they line up with the other teeth. Great. Now that we're here, and we've successfully lined those up, let's actually get the block shape of the frame. I don't know what to call this. The frame of the hinges. Yeah. Sure. So that is from the middle tree. So these faces can go by left. Yep. There's a bit of overhang around the edges of our box, so we're going to add an edge loop that sort of lines up with them. That looks like a 20% to me. So 20% on one side, 20% on the other side. Whoop. 20% on this side, 20% on this side. Good. Then these faces can go away, but there's a very thin line underneath these hinges that connects the plastics. We're going to have that in. That looks like, let's call that a 10%. It's a bit thick, but that works for our purposes. 10%, 10%. Oh, there we go. Now we'll delete the faces we don't want. Face, delete. Goodbye to you. Goodbye to you. Goodbye to you. Goodbye to you. Now, I've deleted those faces, but we've only deleted the faces that we can see. So we'll Control 1 so that we can see the back faces. Delete those as well. And now we have these holes that we need to patch up. So we'll go to our edge select, select our hole, and bridge it. If we do this, we get this weird shape. That's because we didn't deselect the end caps. So let's deselect the end caps. Boom. Now when we bridge it, we get the happy little fillet shape. Same thing over here. Select the whole edge loop by double clicking an edge. Deselect these two. Bridge. Same thing on the other end. Select the edge loop. Deselect the end caps. Bridge. Select the edge loop. Deselect the end caps. Bridge. Huzzah! The frame of our thing. Now when we smooth this, we'll end up with this little shape. This is alright, but you'll need to add in edges here and here to make sure that it's still box shaped. We'll need to add edge loops that go vertically for each of these, so that they also stay sort of box shaped. We'll add in the same edge loops on each of these. And remember that if you don't want to do this twice, once for this side and once for the other, you can always delete the other side and then just mirror the one that is complete. So that's faster. There. And I won't do the ends yet because we're going to need to add in more geometry to the ends. Yes?
Would the symmetry tool also work?
The Symmetrize tool is not able to add in edge loops, to my understanding. It just moves them around so that they match. We'll add in edge loops to the inside of these teeth so that they don't work. And we'll notice that when we smooth, because we haven't added edge loops, if I add an edge loop here, for instance, one of these will end up more square than the others because I've added in that edge loop. But on the box, these are all rounded hinges, so we don't need to add edge loops up here. This way we end up with round shapes, which is good. But also we need to add these two edge loops to make sure that this stays straight, and two edge loops here to make sure this stays straight. Is all right in the peanut gallery over there?
Oh,
You guys good?
yeah.
He
Alright.
slept on the water bottle this morning, so it's been here since 10 a.m.
Good stuff. I don't know what you want me to say to that. Alright, so now that we've done this, we'll do something similar with the lid. First thing we're going to do with the lid though, we've got these edge loops over here and these over here that are not complete. So we'll just go ahead and add those in. 1, 2, 3. Oh, 3, please, thank you. Same thing on the other side. 1, 2. Yes.
Can you show me how to do the mirror again?
How to do the mirror?
Yes.
Yes. So here is an object. Well, okay. Let's do the mirror thing now. I'm going to delete the back half of this so that we can do the mirror again. Object mode. Select the thing.
Okay.
Good. Victor. Mesh menu. Somewhere down the middle bottom, there's this handy thing that says mirror. If you click mirror, you will get this tiny little menu, and nothing will change. Well, something will probably change. Currently, we have cut geometry on, axis position world. If you change that to object, then instead of mirroring across the world space and the world axis, will mirror across where our pivot point is of the object. The offset is whether you want to move that mirror line around. The axis is currently the x-axis. We can take a look at our happy little grid thing in the bottom so that we know where that axis is pointing. There's no reason to mirror across the x-axis right now. We want to mirror it across the z. Okay. Merge border allows you to, if the two objects would be squished up into each other, they would automatically merge vertices so that you don't end up with doubles. Those are the ones that matter. Merge threshold also kind of matters if you're merging the border. If you set the merge threshold to way too big, then your entire mesh will become a single vertex. So keep an eye on merge threshold. And lastly, if when I have my option selected and I go into the mirror tool, instead I click this happy little box, this will pop up this exact menu, but as an actual window, right? Cut geometry, axis position, which axis are we doing it? But there's also an option for combine with original. If you unclick that, then you will get a new mesh and you can manipulate the two independently. Great. Mesh mirror. No problem. So, Now that we've added in the edge cuts along the side of our lid, we are going to cut the lid up by selecting the faces of each individual side. So I will go ahead and select these, and then deselect the enemy teeth. I don't know why I described them as enemy teeth. It's what I did, so I will live with that decision. So now I've got half of them selected. I will go to Edit Mesh, Detach. If I do that, now when I double click my object, I have two separate meshes that are still combined into one object, right? There's no new polycube, there's still one object. And if I smooth them, we can see that I'm actually only smoothing half of them at a time. Alright. Now from here, we're going to Control 1, go to our edges. We want to select the teeth at the end. We want to move them up, just so that they look like teeth. Same thing with these, because we added in those edge loops. We're going to want to account for that. There we go. Make it nice and diagonal. If you don't want to move them separately, we can hit the B key, the dreaded B key. We can go to, oh, we don't have the right stuff on the side. Modeling, workspace, what does my workspace look like? Windows, workspaces, give me my general workspace now, thank you. If we hit the B key, that is the soft select key. On our far right, underneath our channel box or attribute editor, we have modeling toolkit. This is a menu that I have not shown you yet, so I'll briefly go over it. First off, up here, we have object mode, vertex select, edges, and faces. I've shown you the shortcuts for those so that you don't have to rely on these buttons. And then you have a bunch of options for how you want to select things. But the ones that I care about, because I've hit the D key, are soft select. If I click the soft select, they will stop being yellow. If I re-click the soft select, they will stop being yellow. If I hit B, it will also toggle. And then we have this happy little number here. This happy little number is in Maya units, and it tells you how far your soft select is going. There's also this curve that you can play around with. We're not going to worry about the curve for now. What I am going to worry about is that I want this edge here in the middle to be yellow, so I'm going to pump this up to, say, 10. Now it's sort of reddish. And now when I drag my move, I will move all of those according to the curve. Did I lose anyone about soft select? Good. So there's half of them. Gonna do the same thing on the other half. Oh, something weird happened here. Wait a minute. Yes, something weird did happen here. So because I had it on volume, I accidentally selected the faces of the what I described as the enemy teeth. If I instead switch to surface, because they are detached, I will deselect the ones that I don't want to move. There we go. So now I've selected only the correct teeth. Now we're going to do the same thing over here. Control 1. Select the edges that we want to move. 1, 2, 3, 4. 3, 4. Yes. Push in the back.
Could you go back to selecting the first set of vertices with the, or the first set of edges with the B key?
What about
The closer to edges, it seems like we're like red-ish.
Yeah,
But the
so
ones that are back with blue.
So the way that the soft select works, I'm going to, for the purposes of demonstration, create a sphere. Here's a sphere. I'm going to select a single vertice, and I'm going to drop this down to 0.1. So the vertice that I have selected is yellow. The neighboring vertices, as I increase this, will turn yellow or red. The ones that I have selected as yellow will be fully selected, and the ones that are red will be kind of selected. So when I move this vertice, because half of these vertices are yellow and half of them are red, this happens.
So rather than only one verse movements,
I'm moving
kind of a
the
radial
blob
effect.
around it.
Okay.
I'm moving a soft selection of vertices.
So that would be good for like sculpting.
This is a decent way to sculpt if you don't have sculpting software. Don't do that in Maya, or do if you feel crazy. I would never do that, but everyone has their own workflows, and I encourage you to find a workflow that works for you. I really wouldn't do it if I were you, but I'm not gonna tell you no. So, now that I've done this, turn off my soft select, go back to object mode. I've elevated those planes up, those are my teeth, but they do not have any depth because they were detached. So we're gonna have to grab border edges. So from here to here. Well, I've selected the outside edges. That is not what I wanted. Can I select the inside edges, please? Thank you. Yes. 1, 2, 3. Select all of my interior edges. Extrude them down. There we go. And just to make sure, because we have this happy little separation here, I will merge those together. Thank you. Same thing on the other side. Merge these together. Merge those together. Thank you. Good stuff. And we'll have to do that for the other side of the lip too. Okay, select edges. Select the interior edges by double clicking the faces along the edge. Extrude down. Ooh. A little bit lower, please. Thank you. Come on, there we go. Vertex, these two merge in. Vertex, the two on the end. Huzzah. Okay. Control 1. We're here now. If we smooth our lid, oh gosh, oh golly, what has happened? We haven't fenced it. So, Control 1. We're going to add edge loops on the sides to sharpen those up. Sides, sides, sides. 3 again. Sides are now sharp, but the other sides are not. So we'll add edge loops going this way. 1, 2. Now our frame is square, but our inside is squishy. If you attempt to add in edge loops here, you will notice that the edge loop breaks. That's because we detached the faces along the inside. So we will have to add these edge loops around our teeth individually. 1, 2, 1, 2. And we can see that the ones that we added edge loops to are now looking a little sharper. We'll also have to add in edge loops on the end caps, going this way. 1, 2. As well as the tips of our teeth. 1, 2. And now the ones that we have fenced look quite a bit sharper than the ones that we do not have fenced. For the purposes of time, I won't be fencing the other ones. This is what they're supposed to look like. This is not what they're supposed to look like. Make them look like this. Next, we will notice that by adding the edge loops that sharpened up the teeth, we've made the ends rounder. That's fine, because again, the bits in the hinges are rounded, so we don't need to make them square. And if we round these, we can see that they almost fit. We might need to make them a little thicker. So let's do that. We'll select the faces that go here, all the way to here. I will hit Object Control 1 so that we can see what exactly we're doing. So these faces, the ones that are on the ends. There we go. That whole end bit. Oh, come back to me. Thank you. If we just scale these up, oh gosh, there. R. Thank you. If we just scale these up, drag them slightly more into position. There we go. Smooth. Object. smooth hinges. Ta-da. Good. That's that. Next, the front half of the box. We have this funky little shape. Whoop. I'm gonna try and zoom in on that. We have something that looks like two squares and a little handle that goes between them. We can do that with the bit that we left over on our side boxes. So I can just grab these two faces of our side boxes, bring them together. There's the side. We can see that it does include a bridge up top, so we might, but not from the hinges. So we don't want to include the hinges, but we might want to include this face, those two faces, and these two faces over here. Which is, there we go, better. Then we want to cut out the middle bit. Cutting out the middle bit is easy because we know how wide the middle bit is based on this. We can go to our insert edge loop tools. Whoop, whoop. I click insert edge loop. I should not have done that. Mesh tools, insert edge loop, hit the happy little square because we want to make sure that we are inserting two edge loops. Good. Just click in an edge. Boop. There they are. We're gonna delete these faces. Right. Is that the best way to go about this? Probably. Is there a thin little strip above them, or can we delete the whole thing? There is a little thin strip above them, so we'll leave the strip there. So we'll just delete the bottom half of these. Hello, faces, thank you. Why are you doing this to me? Because I have the insert edge loops tool selected. Aha, there we go. Select. Delete, delete, delete. Get rid of those. Bridge the under half of the happy little strip. Okay, we're getting there. I'm actually going to, at this point, let's see, put it in this view so that we can reference it from here. We've got the handlebar and these weird extrusions. We can add in those weird extrusions by doing something like this. How do I want to do this? Let's do it like this. I'm gonna make these a little wider. Select this face. Move this down a little bit. That looks like the right shape. Good. We can do a mirror trick later to get it onto the other side. Then we also have these indents on the side panels. We can add those. Select these faces. Extrude them. Add an offset to them. There we go. And then extrude it again. Click it in a little bit. There it is. And we can add in a handlebar by making a new cube and dragging it into the handlebar position. Ta-da, handlebar. I did select cube, right? Yes, good. Stretch this out. Look like a handlebar. Line that up. Actually, put it lower down. Add in a couple edge loops. Through our subdivision method, we'll add in 3. Select the faces in the middle. Whoop. Select the faces in the middle. There we go. Pull those out away from the box. It's smooth. Yeah, that looks like a handlebar shape. And then a couple edge loops to make it look more square. Actually widen it out a bit because it doesn't look like it lines up correctly. There we go. That looks quite a bit better. And then we'll add in our edge loops. Let's do 10% on this side, 10% on this side, 10% here. Oops. And another one then. Handle. Huzzah. We're going to mirror the handle to the other side. Mesh, mirror. This time we want it over here. So we want it in the x-axis direction, but we want it in the positive direction. There it is. Great. And then we want to fix up what we did here. Before we mirror this, I'm going to smooth it so that we can see where we need to add in more edge loops. So we need more edge loops here. We need another edge loop going across here. We need an edge loop going across here. And we need an edge loop that goes around this way. This one. Let's do that. Better. Let's go here. Here. And also under here. Great, mountain square. I'm sorry if I'm putting you to sleep. Everybody loves fencing. It is a favorite thing to do. There we go. Now that we've done that, we're going to do our mirror trick. Since we need it mirrored from this side to this side, we're going to cut it half this way. So go to our multi-cut tool, cut it in half. Delete the half we don't like. Oop, don't select the lid. We also want to mirror it from right to left, so we also need to cut it around here. Delete the half we don't like. Goodbye. Now we've got a quarter. So we'll go to Object Mesh, Mesh, Mirror. We'll start by doing it in the Z direction, because it doesn't really matter. Negative Z, there it is, that's half box. Then we're going to deselect it, reselect it, mesh, mirror again. This time we want it in the X direction, but instead of the negative direction, we want it in the positive direction. And there we go. Great. Success. Now, when you turn this in, currently it is all separate objects. We want to select the whole crate. We want to edit, delete by type history. What this will do, if you look at the chat box on the far right, we have so many options to choose from. We don't actually care about any of that. When we delete by type history, all of that will be gone. Hooray. And lastly, we can combine it so that it all is a single object. Now, as mentioned previously when we were talking about the dice, you remember the hollow blue mess that I had to look at? We don't want to turn that in. So instead, once again, we're going to, in the viewport, 2 to the right of this little blue cube sort of in the middle, is a blue cube surrounded by white lines. Click that. Unclick that. And now we have this wireframe that is still blue, but I can also see the mesh. Snip that, turn that in. We will, let's see, we are an hour away from the end of class, so we will try to cover the last crate, and then we will talk about rendering, if we can get there. So, the last crate, this crate, let's save that image, crate 3. Were there any questions about the orange crate, by the way? Or how I turned on the wireframe? Okay. Everyone good to move on to the wooden crate? Great. I love Silence from the Phoenix comic. So, the wooden crate, I believe I found reference for the wooden crate off of Walmart. Let's see. No, it's this crate. The pet crate. The pet crate is, well, there it is. It's loading. I don't care about browsing in Costa Rica. Hooray. So we've got our dimensions for our crate here. We're going to copy those into here. Let's move this crate out of the way. Oop. Now that our crate is finished, in fact, what we can do is we can create a new layer from selected, select the crate, make a new layer, name that layer crate 2. And we can just hide that so that we don't have to worry about it, and it'll be there when we need it later. Yes?
I can tell on the wooden crate, is there glass in between the bones?
No. There is not. Because the pet that is inside of the crate needs air.
I mean, it just looks like it on the front ones, not the side ones.
Don't laugh, okay?
It just looks like
It's, I don't know if that's just the image or if there is glass there. For our purposes, we'll pretend there's no glass.
It was just the way that you're like, it needs to breathe.
It needs to breathe. The animal needs to breathe. Animal needs air.
Sometimes.
So, sometimes.
Yeah, it looks
Simple.
I just don't know what to say. So, I have selected the image plane that I have previously imported, and this is a thing you can do in other projects, but I'm just going to do this now to explain it. If I select my image plane, and on my far right of my Maya window, I go under the channel box to this one that says Attribute Editor, I will get this happy little menu. When I am inside of this happy little menu, I want to go to Image Plane Shape 1, because this is my first image plane shape, and I have an image name that has a file directory. I can click on that file directory and type in a new one, or I can click this happy little folder, and it will open up the folder opening thing. I can go to my new image folder, and I can change the image. Great. But it will keep the dimensions of the old image, so if you do this, you'll have to adjust the sizes of your image to make sure that it is properly all in there. For the purposes of this explanation, this is fine, so I don't think I will be doing that. But just know that that is an option you have available to you. So, new crate, new dimensions. According to the website, let's see, the new crate, let's change our template cube, so we'll go back to our template layer, select our cube, I have it on R, so I can select it, there we go. Select our template cube. Our width for this cube is 29.7 by 21. Yep, just 21 by 24.2. Something tells me this is in metric, because I don't know why you would ever carve something to 0.2 inches. All right, so here's our crate. We're going to go back to template view. We're going to copy these numbers. Yep. Good. Next crate. Oh, right. Because the other crate had wheels, so our template cube is slightly up. So let's move that back to 0. Great. That's unhelpful. D, select to the bottom, hold X, drag it up to the grid, go to the side view, make sure it's on the grid. There we go.
Question.
Yes.
How did you set it to go to the bottom?
So I will undo my stuff. So currently it is hovering somewhere in space because there should be wheels under it. If I go to my translate Y in my channel box and I attempt to set that to 0, it'll snap to the origin. That's why I said, oh, that doesn't help. That's because I have not moved my pivot. If I go to D, I hold V and move my pivot down to the bottom of the object, you'll notice that the translate doesn't change over here, yes?
Whatever you're doing with this, I have a question.
Good. And then I can go back to the W and hold X and move it until it snaps to the grid. Come on, 1 unit down, please. Thank you. Yes.
Can you 3D print from Maya?
Can you 3D print from Maya? No, there's other softwares that are in between.
Okay.
Yeah.
So is this important to the 3D printing part?
Is
Like
this?
setting it on top of the grid?
Oh.
Or is that part kind of just for visuals?
It will matter later.
But not here.
For the purposes of 3D printing, I don't believe it matters. Once you are importing things into a video game engine, where your object is relative to the ground will matter. Because if you import a table that is halfway into the ground, when you put it in a game engine, you'll have to move it up.
So pretty much if you're ever making an asset for something, make sure it's
Make sure
on
it's,
top.
yeah.
Okay.
Make sure that whatever should be on the ground is. If you're making something that has parts that are underground, for instance, the base of a fire hydrant, that should be in the ground.
Okay.
Yeah. Box. Huzzah. We want to make another box to put inside of our reference cube. Box. Now the fun thing about the wooden pet crate is that much like the rope crate, we can see that it is composed of several thin rectangles. Some of you might choose to make this crate by extruding a single cube, like they did with the rope crate. Don't do that. You can, but it'll be harder. So instead, we're just going to line up a bunch of cubes until they are in the positions that they should be. So, let's define a thickness for this cube, for these wooden poles. To me, knowing that it is about 29 inches across and 24 tall, these bars look like they're maybe 2 inches wide. So let's try 2 by 2. Adjust to centimeters, 2.54, 2.54, 2.54. Line this up with the corner. D, V, move my pivot to the corner of my cube. B, align. Switch this from template to reference so that I can snap the cube to the edge of the cube. Good, 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 good. Set it to the actual bottom right corner so that when I move it up, I can snap it to the grid. Good. And now I've got a wooden piece of cube in the corner, and I can just scale it up, until it reaches the ceiling. Good. I'm going to mirror that around. Mesh, mirror. I'm in the negative Z axis, so I want positive X. And one more time, positive Z. There we go. Those are my corner posts for this crate. Except that it has a lid, so I'm actually going to make all of these a little shorter to account for the lid. And if we pay extremely close attention, I'm actually going to go back to D2L for this one. If we pay extremely close attention, underneath the crate, it has little leggies. So I'm actually also going to move these up a bit. I'm going to shrink them back down. And that'll give us room to add the little leggies, little nubs. Good, here's the start of our crate. Now, the crossbars, I'm going to go back to D12 because this is a higher reference image. The crossbars on the door appear to be the same thickness as the crossbars on the side of the thing. Same thing with all of the other crossbars that make up the frame. So we'll go ahead and select these. Go to object mode, mesh. I'm going to separate them so that I end up with 4 separate objects. 1, 2, 3, 4. Please let me select them. Thank you. And I'm going to start duplicating them and rotating them to where I want them. I'm also going to swap this back to template. Great. So hold J. Edit, delete my site history because I ended up with the weird glitch. Try that again. Still no. It's currently in a group. Alright, since it's currently in a group, I'm going to select everything in the world. Edit, delete my site history. And then I'm going to select the one I want. And all these that are currently inside of my E-Cube 9. Move them in my outliner with middle click. Delete the group. And let's try that one more time. Select it. And attempt to rotate it. And we're good and happy. Hooray. Line this up to the middle of our grid. Figure out where it is. There we go. Move it, center it up in the grid. Move it down. D, V, D, shrink it in. Good. And we can see that there's a bit of a lip in between the frame And the other pieces of the frame, each piece of wood has a little lip around it. So we're gonna rotate this around, and we're just gonna scale it in a little, so that we create that lip sensation. Alright, now we've got this lip in between the two cubes. Great. We're gonna mirror this to the back. Mesh mirror. Positive X. Good. Now we can also mirror it to the top to save ourselves some time. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to mirror upwards. That is the y-axis. We haven't used the y-axis yet. We want it positive because we want it up. We're going to move the offset. You can move the offset by dragging this arrow or by playing with this offset setting. We haven't done that yet, so one more time. If I'm mirroring it vertically, I will change my axis to Y. Because everything is above the grid, it will automatically put it below the grid. But we want to mirror it upwards, so we'll change our direction to positive. That'll make it look like it's glitching. That's because we're trying to mirror things in the same direction that we already are. But if we move our offset, we can position it where we want. Any questions about mirroring upwards? I see confused faces, yes.
Can you snap to vertices?
Can you snap to vertices with the mirror? Yes. But it's kind of finicky. Yes.
I'm trying to do the crate, but it feels like the planks are too wide.
Which crate are you trying to do?
I'm trying to do the wooden crate, the first example.
Sure.
But it's just, it looks too fat in comparison to this.
Right. So can you go to the scale? So we decided that instead of it being a 2x4, we made it a 1x2.
Alright.
Yeah. No problem. All right, continuing with this crate. We're going to rotate these faces. And currently, since we mirrored them, they're all one object. That's fine, but our pivot is wildly out of position. So what we're going to do, we're going to go to modify. Whoop. Modify, thank you. Center pivot. That snaps the pivot to the center of the combined objects. We can then duplicate with Control D and rotate them around 90 degrees. Whoop. It is not selected. Bar. Let's try it again. Rotate them around 90 degrees so that they're sort of in the right positions. I'm going to select two of them. Move these in. Select the other two. Get rid of them because they're out of position. We're going to re-mirror these ones. And we're going to make these wider, longer. Great. There we go. They are in position. Now we're going to mirror them across. Mesh mirror. Z. There we go. That is the frame of our crate. We're going to go ahead and add in the lid up top now. Box, new cube. Drag that up. Make our dimensions the same as the frame for our crate, which was again 29.7 by 3.1. Oop, I accidentally typed in a slash. There we go. Just 4 centimeters. 2.4, 2.4, 2.4. Good. There's our lid. Our lid has several crenellations. We can fix that. We can create that with extrusions. We're going to do that. We're going to make sure that it's sitting nicely on top of our box. And then we're going to start adding in edge loops. Oop. Let's go to top face. Drag that down. Get it inside of the box. Make it nice and thin. Control E for extrude. We're going to add an offset so that we get a smaller square on top. Then we're going to extrude again. drag the offset in, up. We're going to see that there's 2 floors to this, so we're gonna do it one more time. Control E, offset. Up, and Control E, up. And then when we smooth it, we see that we end up with a funny shape. So we're going to add some fencing to that. Bang, bang. Now when we smooth it, it will not be an oval anymore, but we will lose a lot of the definition of those ridges that we just added. I will explain how to fix that in a bit. So, now we have this shape, but we can see that the individual steps sort of blur together. We're gonna fix that, yes.
How did you get it so the outside box is in like a wireframe mode while the other one is solid?
This white wireframe box you mean?
Yeah.
We used layers instead of a template.
Oh.
Yeah. So we're going to fix the steps by adding in a couple edge loops on the inside of our offset. Hooray. And having done this, now when we smooth it, we will have something that looks like this. Good. There is our ziggurat-like lid. Moving on, the insides of the frame, the 2 side panels and the back. Those are just planes. I can make a cube if I really wanted to. Scale it up. Oh, hello? Cube? Behave? Make it a cube. Scale it up. Thank you. Weird. Cube. Scale it up. Drag it into position. Sort of halfway to the depth of this plane. If I didn't want to eyeball it, I can select this cube. I can add a edge loop that goes lengthwise at 50%. And then if I did that, I can go to object mode on my plane, and I can hold V to snap it to that center line. Move it into position. Scale it to cover up the whole side. There's my side panel. It's a bit low. I'm going to take this top face, drag it up. Just sort of eyeball it. Looks like it goes about 2/3 of the way up. If I didn't want to eyeball it, I can again go to one of the side panels, add an edge loop wherever I want to call it. So let's say it was actually 2/3 up, that would be 60%. So I can add in that edge loop at 60%. Go back to my actual object that I want to move, select the face, hold V, and snap it to that edge loop. Now that we've got that, we're going to mirror the side panel. Make it V. Mirror the side panel. It's missing the wooden crossbar that is above it. That is the same as these. I only want to care about the bottom ones, so we're going to select the bottom faces, move those up. There we go. Now we notice that it's a bit tall. That's because we snapped this to the top of the sidebar. So instead, we want to go to D, V, snap our widget. Oh, I hit B on accident. Snap our movement widget to the top of these planks. Move that to our 60% line. And then adjust our side panels so that they're a bit shorter. We're going to grab 2 of these, object mode, separate them, mesh separate. Same thing up here, mesh separate. And we're going to rotate these around. Oop, modify, center pivot. Oop. Give me a copy. Thank you. Rotate that 90 degrees. There's an error. That's because it's inside of the group. Select everything. Edit, delete the group history. Select the stuff that's in the group. Middle mouse click to drag it out of the group. Delete the group. Once more, select the thing we copied, rotate it around, and move it into position. There we go. Move it this way around. Make sure that it's centered to the grid. Scale it in. Notice that it's a little bit out. Shove it in a bit. There we go. Scale it in a bit. There we go. There we go. And we're going to mix things up for the bottom panel. Instead of adding in a new cube, I'm just going to add in a couple of edge loops to this one. Let's go here, there. And having added in those faces, I'm just going to select them and extrude them down. Just to mix things up. So there we go. That's that part of the crate. Oh, I appear to have missed the bottom halves of these. Select these. Drag them down. Don't know how I got rid of those, but problem solved. Great, that's the outside of my crate. I can't quite tell if the bottom of this crate is the floor, if it doesn't have a bottom, or if that's like a carpeted base. For our purposes, let's pretend that it has a bottom. I'm going to go ahead and just add a cube. Scale that up. Thin it out. Move it slightly up. And up the bottom. Huzzah. The crate has a base. Now for the pipe work. Pipe work is pretty easy. Let's make another cube, or a cylinder if you would prefer. I think that they look more square than they do round. Your call. I'm going to add in a cube. I'm going to drag it up to the windows. Line it up sort of to the middle of the windows. Whoop, come back. Thank you. Make it nice and tall. Grow my cube here. Move it sort of to the middle of the windows. Scale it down because currently it's poking up through the top. Call that good. We're going to count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 along the sides. So these need to be spaced out evenly in groups of 9. Joy. Well, we can go to our insert edge loops tool. Insert edge loop. We're going to go to the happy little box. Multiple edge loops. How many edge loops do we want? We want 9. Add them in. There they are. We're going to grab the object that we need to move. So vertex move. Snap it to one of them. There we go. Scale it up a bit just so that it has some thickness like it does in the reference images. And now we're going to do some fun stuff. So I have my bar selected. I'm going to hit Control D, that is duplicate. I'm going to move it into position. And from here, I'm going to hit Shift D. And I'm just going to spam Shift D until all of them are in. Shift D is duplicate with transform. If you Control D to duplicate something and then move it around, you can then spam Shift D to get it to do this. And each of these is its own object. So now that we've spammed in the windows for one half of it, we're going to select all of the window frames, deselect the back, mesh, mirror, mirror it across the positive x-axis, Nope. Positive z-axis. Oh, why do I only get one? Ah, it's cheating me. Alright. Since we're only getting one, we're gonna undo. While we have them all selected, we're going to go to Edit, Delete by Type History, just to make sure that nothing goes wrong. Then we're going to go to Mesh Combine, make them all one object, and then we're going to mirror those. Now it's going to behave as I told it to. Plus Z, huzzah. Then we're going to grab one of these, mesh, separate it, so I get a copy. Drag that into position. Modify center pivot because I've lost it. There it is. Drag that into position over here. Rotate it around a little bit. Figure out how many are along the back. Oh dear. How many are along the back? Let's assume that it's the same as the ones on the front. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Great. We only need 5 here. So we're going to select this object, Mesh Tools, insert Edge Loop. Currently it's set to 9. We're going to swap that back to 5. Add in those edge loops. Line this up with one of them. Duplicate it. Control D. Hold V. Snap it to the next one. Shift D. Copy it the rest of the times. And since these are the same as the door ones, we'll get to the door. The door is identical to the frame, except it's smaller. So, object mode, grab one of these. Modify center pivot. Drag a copy. Position it sort of against the wall. Good. Shrink it down a little bit. Great. We want to keep that gap around it so that it can actually pivot. Same as there's a gap here. Mirror that. Mesh mirror. Negative Z. Thank you. Same thing with the top and bottom bars. Select the faces of one of them. Mesh. Separate. Give me an independent copy. Create a clone. Drag that up. Scale it in. Now we're going to mirror this up, or we can just drag a copy. I'm just going to drag a copy up here. There we go. I'm going to steal the back of our box. Drag a clone of this. Put that up front. Oh wait, our door doesn't have this. Never mind. Instead of doing that, I'm just going to add the bars. So I'm going to grab one of our bars from the back. Copy it, Control D, drag it up to the front. Select the bottom frame of my door. Let's go Mesh Tools, insert Edge Loop. We want 5 of them. Thank you. Line this up to one of those edge loops. Sort of halfway in. Line it up to one of the edge loops. There we go. Control D. Line it up to the next one. There we go. Shift D. 5. And lastly, select them all. And scale. That's that box. Huzzah! Nice and simple crate. Now we are missing the latch. The latch on the crate, this one does have 2 screws. Again, I don't expect you to make the screws, but if you'd like to, be my guest. These 2 little latch bits are just cylinders. So we can go to our door, hang a cylinder, drag that up to the front. We're going to call it good enough. It's about the thickness of this, but maybe half as wide as one of the crossbars. Just going to rotate this around. Please. Thank you. Drag it up to the height of the crossbar. Drag it over to the side. I'm going to put it on wireframe view so that we can see where we're lining this up. we don't want 20 subdivisions. I'm gonna go with a safe 16. I really want to go to 8, but we'll call it 16. Scale it up a bit. Make a copy of it. Now we want to bridge a couple sides of it, right, so that it matches the latch. Go ahead and do that. Select a couple faces, sides, a couple faces along the sides. Actually, because I've duplicated them, I need to combine them first. Mesh combine. Now we can select a couple of the sides. Let's do it for each. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Deselect the extra faces. Bridge them. That's the latch. Now, because we've done this, we do need to, when we smooth it, you'll notice that we'll have this error. If I go, we'll notice that this is happening. Now, because we bridged it before adding in subdivisions, we're going to have a lot of difficulty adding in subdivisions at this point. So before you bridge it, one good way to subdivide cylinders, pro tip, I'm going to unduplicate my cylinders. One great way to subdivide cylinders is to just add caps. So I'm going to add 3 caps to the cylinder. Now when I smooth it, it is quite a bit better. Now I'm going to duplicate it, combine it, bridge it. We're going to have the time of our lives. Mesh, combine, edge, face, bridge. Mesh, combine, edge, face, bridge. Yeah, you know what that means. 4 faces, select 4 faces, bridge them. There's our latch. When we smooth it, it is quite a bit nicer than it was last time. I'm going to add 2 subdivisions on the inside of this, and along the other side here. There. There's our latch. And we can even, since we added the caps, pull this in a little bit. Go to our faces, select some of these caps, pull them out. Screw them out so that we end up with the holes where the screws would be. Any questions about the latch? Great. So at this point, I've shown you how to model all of the crates. You should be more than capable of modeling them yourselves. So now we're going to talk about render settings very, very briefly, just as we end class. So, for this project, you are intended to render them. So, I do want this wireframe. I will settle for this wireframe. If you submit this wireframe, I will be happy. But you will also be rendering them. If you go up to the top left of your Maya menu, you will see this happy little drop-down menu with a lot of options on them. You want to put it on rendering mode. Boop. That hasn't changed a whole lot about the Maya interface, but you'll notice that up in the top menu bar, all of your mesh objects are gone. You don't have mesh display, mesh tools, none of that anymore. So you've got texturing, lighting and shading, windows, a bunch of other garbage. We do not care about the lighting and shading menu. We care about 2 menus. They are the render menu and the Arnold menu down at the end. So let's start with Arnold. If you go to Arnold, you'll have a bunch of options. The important one is Open Arnold Render View. If you do this, you will get this happy little black menu. And if you hit the play button, you will see nothing. That's because there are currently no lights in the scene. For our purposes, to get a simple render, we're going to go back to Arnold, and we're going to go to lights. Just to be clear, we are not going to lighting and shading. We are going to Arnold lights. Inside of Arnold lights, you can spawn lights. That's great. If I create an area light and drag that outside of my crate, it looks like a tiny little spotlight. And it does exactly what you would expect it to do. It's a tiny little spotlight. You can, oh, I've deleted my tiny little spotlight, undo that. If I grab my tiny little spotlight and I go to my attribute editor, I have a bunch of settings. What color do I want my light to be? How bright should it be? What's the exposure? Etc., etc. If you want to set up a very complex lighting setup, you can go ahead and play with those numbers. You can scale this the same as you would any mesh. You can drag it around and position it to light your object in a nice fancy position. You can spawn in additional lights, surround your object, give it its diva debut. If you don't want to do that, you can go to Arnold Lights, Skydome Light, and you're done. This is the easiest lighting setup on Earth. You have clicked the Skydome Light, and if I reopen the Arnold Render view, which I have previously minimized and is now down here, come back, and I hit the play button, please. Why have you failed me? Oh boy. Something has gone terribly wrong. Arnold Light, Skydome Light, yes, it's on. Intensity, let's crank this up to 10, just to make sure that the darn thing is working. There we go. Had to refresh it. So currently I have my intensity set to 10, which means that I can't see a darn thing. I'm gonna change my intensity back down to 2. Great. Huzzah. There's a crate now. This is sort of what you'll be turning in. This is the wrong thing to turn in. We'll go to the render menu. If you go to the render menu, we have a bunch of other settings. The important one is render settings. This is the most important part about your render settings. If you don't want to turn in an EXR, switch it to PNG or JPEG. EXRs are great for animation. They occupy a lot of space. JPEGs and PNG I will prefer. EXRs the department will prefer. Going down, we have other options. Our width and height of our image. If you don't want a tiny image, let's change this to 1920 by 1080. Let's change our resolution to anything more than 72. The important defaults are 72 and 300. 300 is the Photoshop default. 72 is fine for our purposes. If you don't want to render for 5 hours, don't go bigger than this. Once you've set all of that up, we can close our render settings, go back to the Render Arnold view, and instead of having a tiny little square, we should have a slightly more detailed square. You can zoom in on this, by the way, with your mouse wheel, as you would any other image. And you will not be submitting that. Instead, you will go to Render Current Frame in the render settings. And this will do one of two things. I don't know what version of Maya we're running. So the first one is it ends up looking crunchy, and then as you give it time, the dots will fade away, revealing far better dots. Or, if you're in an older version of Maya, I suppose, you will see the blue spiral of death, and you will wait for 10 minutes while the blue spiral of death renders your image. Once it's done rendering, you're done. You go to File in your Arnold Render view, and you hit Save Image. And you save it somewhere reasonable, where you're not going to lose it, and you put that image in V2L so that I can see it. Yes?
What's the longest render time you've ever had?
That I have had? I have rendered a frame for 8 hours. A friend of mine, her name was Maggie Shelton. She, I believe, taught lighting and rendering a couple semesters back. She rendered a frame for 18 hours.
What was in your frame?
What was in my frame? The lobster. You remember the lobster from the first class? Yeah, that took me forever to render. These projects should not take more than less than 10 seconds to render. If your render for this crate is taking more than 5 seconds, something might have gone wrong. If it takes more than 2 hours, something has gone terribly wrong. You should not have that problem with any of our projects. Once you're in modeling for entertainment, then things might start getting spicy. But until then, you're good. So once again, I'll run through this process one more time. You have a crate. It's great. You position it, your camera, however way you want it. I have the camera positioned this way so that it matches the reference image. You can rotate your camera around, blah, 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 blah. Arnold, light, sky dome light, or area light, and play with a bunch of settings. Sky dome light, render, render settings. Set it not to EXR. If you want to submit an EXR, I suppose I will take it. But PNGs or JPEGs are preferred. Make sure that your image size has a resolution that I can actually see. And then render current frame. That'll pop up this menu. It'll take a bit. Wait until it stops being grainy. File, save image, paste it into a. You also have options for which camera you want to render from. Don't worry about that unless you're setting up specific cameras. We'll get to that on Monday. That's it. Any questions about rendering? Yes.
So, say if I had a model with a bunch of endons.
You have a model with a bunch of endons.
Well, yes.
Okay.
If I render it, is that going to affect it? Or is it going to look like normal?
If your model has a bunch of n-gons, when you render it, it might not matter, is the short answer. But when you render it, you will be rendering a smooth view. You will hit 3 and then render the model. So if you have n-gons, chances are it's going to rip and tear and I'll be able to tell. You're also welcome to render it not in 3 view, but I won't be too happy about that. If, for instance, oh gosh, I have this face, and we ran into this on the tutoring Discord. Is anyone not in the tutoring Discord, by the way? Okay. Or is that out of not having Discord, or is that out of not having the tutoring Discord? Like, okay. So I'll get that out to you again in a bit. But one thing we had to deal with was that one student during their crate process had Booleaned the cylinder into a rectangle, and the result was less than pretty. So if I go to
You can be honest.
select this cube, please. Thank you. And then the cylinder. If I Boolean this, mesh, modeling, mesh, Booleans, A minus B. I now have this n-gon shaped hole in the side of my cube. When I smooth it, it does that. Happy little cut around the outside. If I go ahead and let's object mode, control 1, add in an artificial edge loop. This is going to be fast and dirty. Oh gosh. Let's do it from the top view instead. Object, control 1, thank you. Fast and dirty. Please. Thank you. 1, 2, and then side view, we'll call that 1, 2. So if I attempted to do this, that'll be fine, smooth it. Now I've got a rectangle with an n-gon shaped hole in it. Object, control 1, smooth view, go back to my perspective camera, go back to my render settings. If I attempt to render something with an n-gon in it, Maya will scream. Don't have n-gons. Further questions about rendering? Great. Then I believe we are done here. Remember that your crates are due Monday. I will be here on Friday to help all of you with all of your questions you are going to have, because you will have questions, because that happens all the time. And on Monday, we get to start our chairs. Ah, yes, I have to save my recording again. God bless the students that remind me to record.